This is CBC Vancouver News.
That is really, really good news.
A new deal to try and fix the province's shortage of paramedics. High emotions and strong words from HealthSuck leaders to the Vancouver Police Department.
Life is precious, and these little kids are even more so.
How a BC wine named after a little girl is helping to save children's lives. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Dan is away tonight. The province is trying to make improvements to paramedic shortages that have plagued BC communities for years. It's offering up a new deal to procure more staff. As Joel Ballard reports, BC Emergency Health Services is ditching its $2 an hour on-call pay rate, at least temporarily.
This summer, the town of Ashcroft was hit with a pair of tragedies. The details, strikingly similar. 2 seniors died of cardiac arrest while waiting for an ambulance about a half hour away.
It really had a lot of people, not only in Ashcroft, but in the area served by the Ashcroft Ambulance Station, worried about, well, what if this happens to me?
Ashcroft has 1 full-time ambulance and a second vehicle staffed for half the day. The rest of the time, on-call workers are expected to cover it. But with severe paramedic shortages across the province, Roden admits keeping it staffed is an issue. To combat that, the province announced a bump to on-call pay, jumping from $2 an hour to $12.
So this increases the incentive for people to take on those on-call shifts, which is important in establishing services there.
In BC, on-call paramedics are paid a base wage, now $12. Once they are called out, that wage then jumps to their regular pay.
I think that is really, really good news. Everyone who I've ever talked to who heard about the $2 an hour model just would shake their heads and say, you have to be kidding.
The new agreement is only temporary until the end of the year or until the province and union reach a more permanent deal in contract negotiations. Still, smaller communities see it as a step forward, like Clearwater, which only has 1 ambulance.
Honestly, it's quite terrifying because you don't know when the accident or the incident's going to happen. You can't schedule your emergencies. It doesn't work that way.
The union says the deal will likely alleviate some pressures on the system, but it's not a solution, adding that 50% of scheduled on-call shifts are not filled across the province.
That precarious on-call model is not sustainable. We need to move towards full-time and more substantial wages and benefits for the whole shift that they're working, whether they're on call or not.
Under the agreement, paramedics will also be paid at a double overtime rate for overtime or recall shifts on evenings and weekends, in hopes of beefing up service not just in small communities, but major centers as well. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Coquitlam.
To Bella Bella now, where emotions overflowed at a ceremony that was supposed to bring closure to an Indigenous man, his granddaughter, and their community. The pair was wrongfully arrested at a BMO in Vancouver 2 years ago. The 2 arresting officers didn't show up for a planned in-person apology last night in Bella Bella. Angela Starrett is there and tells us HealthSuck Nation's leaders now have strong words for the VPD.
2 seats left empty in place of where the HealthSuck expected Mitchell Tong and Cannon Wong to sit. They're the VPD officers who arrested Maxwell Johnson and his granddaughter. The news of the absentee officers hit the HealthSuck people hard.
There's no going back. In order for us to move forward, we've got to do it together. In the unfortunate circumstances, we can't do that tonight, for the reasons of 2 people that are absent.
Brown says the nation extended multiple invitations to the officers, and under HealthSuck law, the apology couldn't happen without those 2 specific officers. For Johnson, it's more than just breaking HealthSuck law, it's a missed opportunity for justice and healing.
I was getting anxiety attacks and then I get depression and then I was getting suicidal. You know, we were supposed to have that ceremony today, but we can't now.
While the apology feast didn't go forward, Celtic leaders had an uplifting ceremony for Johnson's family to help them heal from the incident. And during that, hereditary chiefs had words for Vancouver Police Chief Adam Palmer, who, in a CBC story, said the two arresting officers weren't racist.
I heard that the Vancouver City Police Chief said that there was no racism in that police department. And yet, this tribunal found that there was. In all due respect, I can't accept this gift.
In Bella Bella, Palmer told the CBC that the officers didn't attend for personal reasons. And despite the strong reaction from the community, Palmer said the night still resonated with those in attendance.
This ceremony tonight was very powerful, it was impactful, and we want to move forward in a positive way with the Celtic Nation.
Will you be sending your officers back here to go through the formal apology process with the Celtic Nation?
Well, that's something that we're going to work through with our union and with the officers, and we'll see if we can come to a resolution on that.
The Celtic Nation is hopeful Mayor-elect and soon-to-be Vancouver Police Board Chief Ken Sim will help with the reset and a redo on the apology ceremony to finally bring some closure. Angela Sterrett, CBC News, Bella Bella, British Columbia.
Chilliwack Fire and police are investigating a structure fire believed to be suspicious. The Chilliwack Fire Department was dispatched around 2:20 p.m. to the 44,000 blocks of Vetter Road, Mountain Road. Firefighters discovered heavy flames and black smoke coming from a single-story commercial building. No one was injured, though the building was seriously damaged. Anyone with information is asked to call RCMP or Chilliwack Crime Stoppers. Charges are being recommended against a Surrey man accused of issuing death threats against a popular CNN host. CBC is not naming the man as he has not yet been charged in relation to the alleged online campaign, which centered on news anchor Erin Burnett, her family, and CNN employees. Court documents show the FBI, the New York Police Department, and Interpol have all contacted the RCMP with concerns about the accused. The suspect allegedly told investigators that he is not a credible threat. He was arrested and released with conditions in July. Well, Premier John Horgan has given his final CBC interview as he looks back at his time in office. He spoke on CBC Radio's On the Island with host Gregor Craigie.
Honor of my life to be in the office of the Premier for the past 5.5 years, trying to do my best to affect positive change for people, not just in my community, but across the province. And I regret not a minute of it. I've been reflecting on that question more, Gregor, since it's been asked so frequently in the past couple of weeks.
Earlier this year, Horgan announced he would step down as Premier after undergoing treatment for throat cancer. Last week, his successor, David Eby, was declared NDP leader. Well, a high-profile Métis lawyer is questioning the University of British Columbia's response to a CBC investigation concerning Mary-Ellen Turpel-Lafond. The story raised questions about Turpel-Lafond's claims to Indigenous ancestry. For decades, the former Children and Families watchdog in BC has said she was a Treaty Indian of Cree ancestry. CBC's investigation is questioning that ancestry. Turpel-Lafond has provided no evidence to corroborate her claims. She ran UBC's Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Center until recently. In a statement to media, the university indicated it wouldn't comment on her ancestry because it wasn't considered to be one of the criteria for that position. Lawyer Jean Tillett doubts that.
That is not plausible to my mind. I think that the chances of them hiring a non-Indigenous person in that role are zero. Absolutely. In this day and age, zero.
UBC says even though being Indigenous wasn't a requirement for the job, it did consider what it calls relevant Indigenous experience. A shocking discovery for a couple walking their dog this weekend on Malcolm Island. The body of a young female humpback whale was found dead, washed up on the shore. The whale was named Spike and was first documented by scientists in 2018. The cause of death is still unknown, but because of the whale's young age, a collision with a boat is suspected. Scientists are hoping the death will help whale research and also educate the public.
It would be so wonderful if Spike's death and the potential of what happened to her would make people reflect on how much do they know about humpbacks. If they're a boater, do they know the laws? Do they know the ways to reduce risk? Do they know what to do and what not to do if there's entanglement? As a coastal British Columbian, do you know the laws? Do you know who to call when there are incidents of concern, when there is a dead body?
A necropsy and cultural ceremony are set to take place shortly. And on to another story about humpback whales, this one with a happy ending. Dramatic video of a 10-meter-long humpback whale entangled in fishing gear leaping to freedom. Watch the bottom of your screen now for the moment the whale finally bursts free after hours of a dramatic rescue that used everything from a drone, a satellite, a team of experts, and finally acrobatics from the whale itself. The rescue happened in the Strait of Georgia last Thursday. The whale was caught in around 90 meters of polysteel rope along with a buoy and prawn fishing gear. Members of the Pacific Marine Mammal Rescue Team tracked the whale for around 4 hours before that dramatic moment when it was finally set free. The whale's 2 companions stayed by its side the entire time, which is a rare behavior for humpback whales. October is a busy time in the Okanagan, especially this year. It's a late harvest, and growers say the long summer heat could produce a spectacular vintage. But one winery has bottled a unique spirit as a way to remember a little girl lost too soon. Tom Popick reports.
It's harvest time at Courcelles Winery in the Similkameen Valley, and this year's fruit on the vine will make spectacular wine.
Quality's up, volume's up. It is one for the books for us.
But October has become a bittersweet month for Charlie Baszler. In 2020, his phone rang.
It was a horrible moment. You know, my brother was even had a hard time explaining to me the situation over the phone, and when he got the words out, I remember, falling to a knee in the vineyard.
Charlie's niece, Olivia, just a week short of her 5th birthday, had died in Manitoba. The little girl had struggled with a congenital illness since birth, enduring surgeries at Brandon, Manitoba's regional hospital. Her parents, John and Crystal, and family across Canada watching Olivia grow, laugh.
Oh, you're good, honey. Keep pedaling. Don't stop pedaling.
And battle until the last breath.
Yeah, Olivia was full of life, you know. She really enjoyed the short minutes that she had, yeah.
So in this vineyard, after that call, Charlie planted a new seed.
We stopped work. Literally, the tools were dropped.
That day's Syrah harvest was gathered, pressed, and poured into one very special barrel, Olivia's barrel.
225 liters.
Now, after a 2-year rest, the wine has been bottled in remembrance of little Olivia, Olivia the Brave.
It's bigger than grapes, and it's bigger than wine. It's embodied with spirit and purpose.
Bold and bright, this vintage also comes with a goal. All sales of the wine are being donated.
There's a lot you can buy for $30,000.
Brandon Health Center's Director of Operations has already purchased a life-saving respirator for the pediatric unit where Olivia was treated. Regional hospitals, whether in Brandon or BC, often struggle for money. Out-of-province donations are rare. The BC Winery's fundraising is bringing Manitoba patients closer to home.
When you can start to have some of this equipment, it makes it easier for the families, not only the patient, but the families as well, right? So they're not constantly having to travel into Winnipeg to get what should be fairly basic treatment, but sometimes we just don't have that equipment.
For Charlie, bottling wine is just the beginning.
Life is precious, you know, and these little kids are even more so.
With Olivia's vintage almost sold out, the Baszlers are thinking up new fundraising ideas, so the vines here can continue to grow hope and health half a country away. Tom Popick, CBC News, Karamias.
Today, I officially denied that request, which had been pending before me.
A setback for Rogers Communications as their offer to buy Shaw gets shot down. More details when we return. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. There is a new home in Windsor, Ontario, made of 8 shipping containers that will soon house 10 LGBTQ youth. It started out as an innovative way to create housing quickly, but the project ended up being delayed by 2 years. Jason Viao explains.
It's taken us way longer than what we actually thought.
When construction started in April of 2020, Family Services Windsor-Essex wanted to have the 6 units opened by the end of that summer. It's now more than 2 years later, and 10 young people will be moving in by the end of this month.
We need to look at any ways to get more housing into the market.
That's what prompted the Social Services Agency to build its own housing for the first time. But what they didn't expect were all the delays.
It was really hard to get contractors. Then as we moved into what I like to call a post-COVID acuity world, we had issues with supply chain.
The project cost $1.2 million, and 2/3 of that was funded through a provincial program. Another reason for the delays, Family Services says the province's building code hasn't caught up to innovations such as container homes. But one urban designer says it's a balancing act.
And the innovation needs to be tested to meet with the code. So they both have a little give and take to do.
He's mostly seen shipping containers used as commercial spaces and doesn't believe this concept has a big role to play in solving the housing crisis.
The cost of outfitting them is probably the biggest impediment. As I mentioned, you have to build interior walls, you have to put in insulation, you have to do structure around openings for windows.
Inside, you can see the 2 shipping containers fused together to make a 2-bedroom unit. Family Services says they focused on LGBTQ youth because there is an unusually high number of them who find themselves homeless.
But we thought if we really want to reach those youth that are least likely to secure permanent housing on their own, we should have a focus on trying to house youth who identify as LGBTQ2+.
They'll range in age from 16 years old to 24, and it's meant to be temporary housing until they can find a place of their own. Family Services will only be charging them what they get from the Ontario Works program for housing, which is roughly $300 per month. The agency is working on 2 other housing projects with the Community Housing Corporation to put a roof over the heads of even more young people. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
The federal industry minister has officially denied a proposed deal between Rogers and Shaw Communications. The deal would have allowed Rogers wholesale access to Shaw's wireless frequencies.
Earlier this year, I stated that I would, under no circumstances, permit the wholesale transfer of wireless spectrum licenses from Shaw to Rogers. Today, I officially denied that request, which had been pending before me. My decision formally closed that chapter of the original proposed transaction.
Champagne says he's open to a revised deal. He says he's willing to consider Shaw's sale of Freedom Mobile to Videotron under specific conditions, including lowering Freedom Mobile prices in Ontario and the West to the same levels as Quebec prices, which he says are about 20% lower. Well, fireworks are typically a big part of Halloween and Diwali celebrations this time of year, but when it comes to where you can actually set them off in BC, it really varies. Some cities ban fireworks entirely. Other cities allow fireworks as long as you have a permit, which costs between $5 and $35. These are some of the cities banning them completely: Victoria, Vancouver, Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, Chilliwack, Kelowna, and Kamloops and Burnaby. Now, Burnaby, Coquitlam, Port Moody, and Prince George are some of the cities allowing fireworks with a permit, but in places like Surrey, Richmond, the Langleys, and Abbotsford, to name a few, you have to go through a pretty complicated process to get a permit. The BC Sports Hall of Fame has announced its class of 2023. Inductees include ski cross Olympian Kelsey Surwa, NFL Super Bowl winner Mitch Berger, and longtime Canuck Dennis Kearns. Kearns spent his entire 10-year career as a defenseman for the Canucks. He played from 1971 to 1981.
It's a huge honor. I was very, very surprised to get the call. However, I'm very, very happy to be a member of this BC Sports Hall of Fame.
Jake Kerr and Jeff Mooney, the longtime owners of the Vancouver Canadians baseball team, were also honored with the WAC Bennett Award. The official induction ceremony will take place in June. As the governing body for hockey in this country faces growing calls for fundamental change, there are new demands about better equity. The National Women's Para Hockey Team is calling on Hockey Canada for the same funding and the same treatment as the men's team. And as Carissa Donkin reports, the team has had to compete in hand-me-down jerseys from their able-bodied colleagues.
Gardner shot! Once again, Arnold with a glove save.
As a goalie, Tracy Arnold is a key player for Team Canada.
As a child growing up, that was always a dream for me.
She loved playing stand-up hockey as a young girl, but at age 12, after a car accident, she was told she wouldn't walk again.
I really missed it, and I was feeling I was missing a part of myself.
More than 2 decades later, she took up para hockey and made the women's national team in 2019. When she was presented with her Team Canada sweater, it was a mix of joy and frustration. According to her coach, Hockey Canada gave the team jerseys with other players' names on them, originally made for the national women's stand-up team.
It's quite disheartening and frustrating knowing that I put the time in and money and effort to be an elite athlete, to represent our country, and that I don't fit the mold of what the organizing body deems as fit to do that.
The women's team took silver at the first World Challenge competition back in August. Unlike the men's program, the women's team has to pay fully for their own travel costs and equipment. Even the coaches are volunteers. Hockey Canada does pay for insurance, registration, and those jerseys.
I would encourage them to do way more equity, diversity, and inclusion work, because I think that's totally going to turn the page on the sport and open up a whole new possibility of people who love the sport in Canada who just haven't yet felt like it's a space for them.
Hockey Canada is at a crossroads, spurred by revelations that it had millions in reserve funds used to pay settlements for sexual abuse allegations. Tracy Arnold believes funding her team could send a message to Canadians.
Women with disabilities, we know, are some of the most marginalized people in the world, and if Hockey Canada can treat us in a way that promotes respect and equity, this would bode well for showing Canada that they can treat all people with respect and kindness.
Hockey Canada declined an interview. In a statement, it says its mandate is to operate national teams that compete for world championships and participate in the Olympics and Paralympics, a milestone women's para hockey is still working toward. Carissa Donkin, CBC News, Fredericton.
Here's a live shot of Harbour Centre. Amy will have your full forecast next.
Vancouver's big party came to an end tonight. Expo 86 closed with a spectacular final ceremony, 5.5 months after the gates opened. And already it's being called one of the most successful World's Fairs ever, with an astonishing 22 million visitors. Karen Webb reports.
This afternoon's closing celebration began with a series of parades. This one from Canada Place, a motley collection of employees and entertainers who have made the National Pavilion one of the best attended at the exposition. The closing ceremonies were held inside the dome at BC Place. 60,000 British Columbians snapped up the free tickets, and thousands of employees marched into the stadium, pavilion by pavilion.
And the best thing today was to hear that the pavilions of the USSR and the USA came in together.
British Columbia, Canada, I take my hat off to you.
For Jim Pattison, a standing ovation, his second of the summer. Most British Columbians think the man they call Jimmy is single-handedly responsible for the success of the fair.
Thank you.
The party meant the party's over. The last day was different from the days which have gone before it. For the Expo employees, there was one more photograph for the scrapbook. They were in a very good mood this morning, considering tomorrow they won't have a job. The gates opened for the 165th time, and at some point in the morning, the 22 millionth visitor walked in.
Please remember to walk, have a big smile on your face, and enjoy your last day here at Expo.
The last weekend was Expo's busiest, by far. More than 1 million people in the last 4 days. There were times fairgoers could hardly move. Now the debates have begun. Not about whether it was successful, but what kind of success it was.
It's not a local celebration. It's not a carnival. It's an international event of significance in the history of its time.
Jim Pattison won't be answering any more questions. This morning's was his last board meeting. He has resigned effective this midnight. So just like the ticket takers, the bosses lined up to get their pictures taken. And then Pattison said goodbye. Sign this afternoon as well, over and over again. On the Expo site, the cleanup began. Tomorrow they will start to tear it down. Expo 86 has come and gone. Karen Webb, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On November 9th, join CBC British Columbia's Michelle Elliott at a free online UBC alumni discussion about decolonizing arts and culture. Register today at alumni.ubc.ca. And never miss an episode of your favorite CBC drama or comedy again with the free CBC Gem app. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
And Amy Bell joins us now for a look at the weather. Amy, I walked to work today. It was a bad call. I was very wet.
Very wet. I think you were in good company with a lot of other wet folk. Yeah, we got a lot of rain moving in later in the day. So we started off a bit on the drier side, but then those rain showers moved in late in the morning. They stuck around on and off throughout the day and well into the evening. You can see quite an intense area of activity on Vancouver Island, down, of course, into Washington. We've seen a lot of rain as well for the north and central coast, and that will continue to be a caution for the next day or so. And snow still for those mountain passes, especially on Highway 3 for the Paulson Summit, Kootenay Pass. We could even see some on the Coquihalla Summit. So certainly not ideal driving conditions if you're heading out late at night and early in the morning when those temperatures are quite low. We'll catch a little bit of a break tomorrow. So many areas starting off dry, maybe even a few breaks of blue sky, but you can see this next system just barreling down on us, and that is going to bring quite a bit of rain Wednesday into Thursday. So Wednesday overnight into Thursday and Friday. So we'll have to keep track of that to see how much accumulation. But again, very hard hit on areas of Vancouver Island, north and central coast, and some snowfall for those mountain passes. We'll see a bit of shower activity for Tofino, but Comox, Nanaimo, and Victoria all dealing with some sunshine in the morning. We'll even see some sun for the Fraser Valley. Those temperatures around 10 degrees for most areas. Williams Lake, showers tomorrow. Bit of sunshine for Prince George. Some wet flurries for Dease Lake, and Port Hardy getting a lot of rain. You'll get some flurries for Cranbrook as well, and Prince George, you'll also get some flurries in the overnight hours tomorrow. Our 5-day forecast, brighter to start tomorrow with that rain arriving late in the evening. Lots of rain for Thursday, Friday, cloudy on Saturday, and back to more rain on Sunday.
Okay, so better luck tomorrow for the walk to work, then more rain on the way. All right, thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
And that is your late news for Tuesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Good night.